Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. Today we have a brand new guest joining us talking about some brand new things. Her name is Lauren Drake. She's a numerologist, a Reiki master, a podcast host. And so Lauren, welcome to this podcast. I'm looking forward to talking to you.
Thank you so much, Glenn. I'm so happy to be here.
Definitely. So before we get into some of our exciting topics today, can you maybe take a few moments to tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do? Who is Lauren Drake? Tell us what we need to know.
All right. Okay, this is a deep one.
There you go.
All
Take us
right.
in.
So, as you already said, I'm a numerologist,
Mhm.
right? And we'll get into what numerology is because that's going to be the purpose of what we want to talk about today.
Yep.
But myself, I am a continuously evolving spiritual being, which
Mhm.
I hope we all are, right? We're all kind of on that track to hope continuously grow.
Yep.
And I found numerology a few years back. And it really helped me understand myself, put the pieces together of who I am and what I've gone through in life, because I have not always been walking this holistic spiritual path at all.
Mhm.
I actually grew up in a Catholic home, and schoolwork was a big focus,
Mhm.
and graduated valedictorian. I was like super perfectionionist. Got a
You and
degree
me
in
would have
food
been best
science.
friends. That was me too.
Right? Were you in the band too?
I wasn't in the band, but
Okay.
everything else I did, I was like had to be the best.
Yeah. Yeah, we probably would have been in a lot of the same classes.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, so grew up in really that kind of mentality where
Mhm.
it was very outwardly focused, and my achievements were based on how good I did in school.
Mhm.
And rather than, me looking at myself and just being proud of who I am.
Mhm.
So, I went very focused that way and worked in the food industry for 15 years. I was actually a quality and food safety professional, got pretty high up, and a few years back, and then I got to what I thought was my dream job back
Mhm.
then, and I realized I don't want it anymore.
Mhm.
And it wasn't aligned with who I had become. And that's when, right at that time, I found numerology. And that's why how I was able to put the pieces together and realize, oh, this is exactly why I'm feeling unsettled here, because I'm not really allowing myself to be authentic.
Yeah.
I'm being who I thought I should be and who I was kind of groomed to be.
Yeah.
Right. And I don't, we grow up with our parents and who we choose to for a reason. And I love them, and they gave me a wonderful life. But I realized a few years at that point, it's like, no, now is time to me to realign to what my truth is, not my conditioning. And that's what's so beautiful about numerology. It breaks that stuff down and really helps you dive into who you are as a spiritual being, your soul, and how to align you to who you're meant to become in this
Wow.
lifetime.
Wow. That's really good. I mean, while I'm listening to your story, I'm thinking back even like over my own life because I went to private Christian school and then I wanted to be a youth pastor. So I went to college
Mhm.
to study youth ministry and Bible. I was like, this is fun. Now I'm going to go and be a pastor. So I went to seminary and I got a master's degree. And then I went to pastor a church for a bunch of years. And of course, the story is much bigger than I'm going to make it out to be. But there came this
Yeah.
moment where I was like, I don't want to do this. Like I
Mhm.
literally prepared my whole life for this and I poured everything I was into this, but I realized I was kind of becoming the person who I thought everybody thought I should be and who maybe even I thought I should be. And I realized this is not really who I want to be or who I even think I
Mhm.
am. And that created this crisis because I poured so much time and so much effort and so many years into doing
Yeah.
this thing. But I felt like there was a time came where I had to say, no more. I need to really
Yeah.
find what I'm really wired to do.
Yeah. And isn't it so
Yeah.
amazing when you reach that point? Like, it's
Oh,
so
it's
freeing.
scary. It's kinda
It
like being at
is.
the
It
edge of a cliff
is.
and, like, you have a parachute and you know you're gonna be
Yeah.
okay, but I gotta jump.
Oh, yeah. That's the full archetype right there, right? Like,
Yeah,
we have to do it to
yeah,
really move on to who we're meant to become.
that's right. So I'm excited about this, particular conversation because as you know, the podcast explores the question, what if there are ways of thinking about God and faith and spirituality that are drastically different than what our traditions have
Mhm.
have handed us? And so most of our listeners, as myself, grew up in a conservative, fundamentalist, evangelical world where it's our way of thinking or it's the highway to hell. We were taught that our way was the way of Jesus, handed down from apostles, handed down from God, and every other way of thinking was from the devil, lead us to hell, all those different things. But now, many of us have come to realize that our tradition is actually quite narrow. The history of the Christian faith, in particular, is very wide and diverse, but also other faiths and other spiritual traditions have a lot of different insights to offer. And so enter you, sending me an
Mhm.
email, introducing yourself to me, which I thank you, but numerology, and maybe we could do Reiki some other time, all those different things.
Mhm.
But, as I said in our email exchange, I don't know anything about numerology. I don't even know what to ask. I went did some like digging online. I'm like, I don't even know what questions to ask. And
That's
so I'm
okay.
just gonna hand you the microphone. I have my coffee and I am ready to
Yeah.
follow you wherever you're gonna lead
Yeah,
us.
no worries. I get clients from all walks of life as well and different levels of knowledge of numerology.
Mhm.
So I'm, very accustomed to explaining it. And I
Perfect.
definitely like to meet people where they're at,
Yeah.
right? And so you can really gain the most from it. So
Mhm.
let me start from the very beginning and let me give you a brief definition of what numerology is. Now,
Mhm.
it's hard to encompass in just a couple of sentences, but I'll do my best. And if you like wanted to Google it, you'd probably find online that numerology, it's a metaphysical science of the study of the vibration of numbers,
Mm,
right? Because everything in our universe is energy. And if you follow the law of vibration, everything, even at a microscopic level, is constantly vibrating because it is all energy. And so, even our thought forms, our feelings, and numbers are energies. And I like to look at numerology. I'd like to compare it to astrology, where
mm,
astrology speaks to the planetary and luminary energies and how they influence our lives. Numerology does the same, but it puts a more tangible name or a number to it.
mm,
So, although I love astrology as well, I've always felt that numerology spoke to me more because I do have that very left brain upbringing and
mhm.
scientific background where I needed that tangible thing to feel into first before to really being able to open up and branch out into more esoteric ideas.
Sure.
Um, right. So, I think a lot of us are like that growing up
Mhm,
in our society.
mhm,
Um, so, speaking of the vibration of numbers, so this, numerology dates back thousands of years toward across multi-cultures,
mhm.
but the most famous person that brought numerology more to the forefront is Pythagoras.
Hmm.
Same
The
Pythagoras
Pythagorean
from geometry
theorem.
class.
Yes, I remember
Yes,
that from school.
exactly. Yes, same guy. So he understood the intricacies of the universe and saw
Mhm,
the importance of numbers. Um, and so what I practice today, it is considered Pythagorean numerology, although there's all different types of numerology out there. There's Chaldean, there's Vedic, there's all different ones.
mhm,
Anyway, but generally you will find that they're all speaking the same language. Even though we may have different ways of calculating and interpreting different things, it comes out to be very similar, which
mm,
I think is wonderful and just a test to prove that we're all connected to the divine.
yeah,
We are all part of this intricate, intentioned universe. So with Pythagorean numerology, we can translate one's birthday and name given at birth down to numbers to understand the energies that a person
hmm.
carries
That's
and that
interesting.
they came in with their soul and
Mhm,
how they're meant to live out their soul lessons.
mhm,
And, the idea behind it is based on your birthday. That is when you chose to come to earth. That is such a significant time. And that is you being birthed into the world and your soul, becoming part of your body right then
mhm,
and merging together. So, utilizing just your birthday by adding up all the numbers in your birthday, you can come up with something which is called your life path number. And this is probably the most famous number in numerology. If you're going to just look up anything in there, that's probably the one you want to focus on first to
mhm,
get to know. Because not only is it one of the easiest to calculate, but it's really meant to be our North Star.
mhm,
That is what we're meant to follow to learn the lessons of who we're meant to become in this lifetime. So you may also find online that explaining it that it speaks to who you are at the core and your emotions, and which, yes, it does. But to also keep in mind, it is an uphill climb to reach the summit of this potential that we have, because it's why we're coming in and the lessons we're trying to learn.
Mm,
So we don't necessarily come in as children already having embodied all of these energies. So this is why we want to, if people are feeling just not themselves, they're kind of lacking direction in life, it's really important to go back to this core number. This is the essential number that we want to make sure that you're living in alignment with.
mm,
Um, but of course, you're not just one number alone at all, by any means. I like to break it down to five core numbers, but to go even beyond that, we're not even just five numbers, right? We're
right.
very nuanced, and
Mhm,
everybody's energy signature is specific to them. Just
mhm,
like a fingerprint, just like a snowflake. Everything is unique,
mm,
and we're all meant to have this unique experience. And I also see it as like, the source, God, divine, whatever you want to call it, expressing through us and living out these different lives,
mm,
right? And experiencing life in different ways. And so that's when you take your life path number with numerology, all numbers get reduced down to a single digit,
mm.
1 through 9. All right. So if you're adding up your full birthday, add, the month, the day, the year, you'll probably get a double digit number. Well, you will get a double digit number. And then you'll add those together, those two numbers, to get a final root number of a single digit number. Now, of course, it's not just as simple as easy as that. And I'll
Mhm,
keep it a little bit simple, but there are other nuances where you may get something called a master number,
mhm,
which is like an 11, a 22, a 33, and so on. So an identical compound number, you have those two identical numbers making it up. But you'll look at that energy, but then also look at the root number that it reduces down to. And why this is significant of a master number, because those energies are just channeled so specifically into the number that's identical in there, that the lessons are just compounded around that, and they don't have, all these other lessons muddying things up, I guess you could
mhm,
say. So they have more potential to really focus and hone in on those energies, and to be able to be open to more intuition, more messages from the divine, a higher purpose. So people that have not only a life path number that is a master number, but master numbers anywhere in their chart, they're meant to really touch more people's lives.
mm.
They are meant to have a higher purpose. And now that doesn't mean if you don't have a master number that you're not as well,
Sure.
right? It's just that is how your soul chose to really funnel these energies into a very focused way. Um, and then, okay, so you have the master numbers and reduce them down to a single digit.
Mhm,
But then we'll look at what that single digit means, 1 through 9, what it speaks to, the challenges that you may have in life, the strengths that you have, and ultimately all the lessons you're meant to learn, to walk through, and to who you're meant to fully embody, right? Again, that's where who you're meant to become in this lifetime.
mm.
Um, and I guess, I'll try to be super brief, but I did want to get a quick introduction to just talking about what each number is.
Yeah, sure. That's
If this
helpful.
is like the Cliffs Notes versions of Cliff Notes.
Crash course
Well,
right here.
yeah, exactly. Right. So if the listeners want to quickly add up and reduce down their birthday, they can figure out their life path number.
Mhm,
And so if you have a one life path number, very quickly, that means that you are meant to initiate. You are meant to be a leader and create things in your life. You're meant to walk a very individualistic path and be that leader that shows people the way.
mhm,
And then if you're a two is a little bit more softer feminine energy. Twos are extremely compassionate and intuitive, but you're meant to focus more on your relationships with other people. And how do you find that balance and cooperation between others in your relationships?
mhm,
And then a threes are the most youthful number, meaning that it's very childlike. So if you have a three life path, you're meant to live a very joyful life. You're meant to find the light through the dark, and meant to fully express yourself. And, either through your creativity, through writing, through speaking.
mhm.
Very familiar with this number because that is my life path number. And then let's go into four. So if you have a four life path number, fours are very mature and responsible, and they are meant to be more of that responsible parental kind of energy.
Mhm.
They're very loyal and really like to help other people out and physically take care of them. These people are, very organized and really analytical. Um, and let's go on to five. So five is a little bit of different energy too. It's kind of similar to the three, where it's childlike, but it's a little bit older. It's more of like the teenager. So where you think of a teenager as going out and just exploring life and trying to have fun and figure out who they are, but having all these different types of experiences. That is what five is meant to do. Is meant to have this really multidimensional experience and trying different things to figure out who they are, but also learning to focus within having all these different interests. So it's like finding your freedom
Mhm.
through your own type of discipline and routine.
Mm.
And then a six is one of the most nurturing numbers. That really is like if you take four as the responsible parent, six is like that motherly energy that just wants to, take care of their children and hug their children. Now that doesn't mean that only, mothers are sixes.
Mhm.
Everyone can carry these energies.
Mhm.
And it is all about guiding other people and really, helping them out and teaching. And that's why if you go to the 33, this is considered the master teacher because
Mm.
33 reduces down to a six.
Mm.
Um, and then let's move on to seven. Seven is another very individualistic number, similar to one, but seven is walking its own path in a more subtle, quiet way,
Mhm.
more focused on spirituality, or whichever way they take it, maybe metaphysics, maybe in a specific religion, whatever it works for them. But it's focusing on walking their spiritual truth
Mm.
and really being true to themselves. And it's a very, very deep, deep number.
Mm.
People that have sevens in their chart, they do not like to be surface level. They want to like get to the depths of everything.
Dig.
Yeah, exactly. And then eight is about achievement.
Mhm.
And if you look online, you'll see a lot of things. It's very material related, which is partially true. Eights are meant to learn to really live and work and be achievement oriented in the material world and really learn how to work with their physicality, but they're meant to align to a higher purpose and not make materialism their purpose,
Mm.
right? They're meant to merge the two to understand how you can be this master manifester in the world, but also use it for good,
Mm.
use it to, reach more people in that way.
Mhm.
And then nine is this big, open, compassionate soul, but extremely wise. Nine is also a leader. Nine people with nines in their charts, maybe they wouldn't call themselves a leader, but they naturally get put in situations where they lead because people
Mhm.
see that in them.
Mhm.
They are meant to lead through integrity and lead through example. Just by living the life that, that's true to them and with compassion, they will naturally inspire other people to do the same and want
Mm.
to follow them as well. And then I'm going to quickly touch on the master numbers 11, 22, and 33.
Mhm.
So 11, this amps up that potential of the two, right? Because 1 + 1 reduces to a two. So people that have this as a life path, they have like dual lessons of the 11 and the two.
Mm.
And they most likely in their everyday life will live in that, the root number of the two. But when they're fully connected to themselves and to their own truth, there's higher potential here.
Mm.
And people that have 11s as a life path number or even in their chart are extremely intuitive. They're very innovative and they naturally have this connection to the divine that they're meant to bring down and share the information and enlighten other people and expand consciousness in other people. And then the 22 is considered the master builder because if you reduce 2 + 2 is 4, right? So you have that very grounded energy of the four,
Mhm.
but it's amplified with this 22. It's more of bringing in the two energy, which remember I mentioned is extremely compassionate and intuitive as well. So it's like the 22 also has those intuitive qualities, but they know more how to bring it into the physical world and make something tangible out of it. And that's why it's called the master builder,
Mm,
because they're really meant to leave something physical behind to help out humanity.
mm,
And then I briefly touched on the 33 when I talked about the six, but that is like the cosmic parental energy that is just, think of Jesus, right?
mhm,
He was supposedly 33 when he was crucified, and he just embodied this energy of unconditional love for everybody, no
mm,
matter where they came from, what their background was. And that is the energy of that 33, that master teacher. And Jesus was also a teacher, right?
mm,
He was many, many things and a healer. And people with these energies naturally will just gravitate towards helping other people out and healing them and teaching them, and other people will see that in them as well.
mm,
It's um it can be very obvious when people that are master numbers really align to their purpose.
mhm,
They are really doing extraordinary things.
mm.
So that's
Wow.
the numbers in a nutshell.
Okay. Okay. That's a lot to digest. So
It is, it
one of the
is.
things that comes to my mind is because we've had some different we've had astrologists on the show. We've also had a lot of tarot readers on the show. And
Mhm.
a lot of the tarot readers have mentioned to me numerology
Yep.
because of the different numbers on the cards. And so I'm seeing just from playing back on some of those conversations, some of the overlaps between these three areas. Like you already mentioned
Yes.
astrology, tarot, numerology. Seems like there's a thread that ties it all
It's
together.
all connected. It
Yeah,
it really, really is.
that's so
And
interesting.
again, yeah, and it just speaks to the beauty of the intricacy of the universe and how not only we're all connected, but everything really is.
Yeah.
And that's what I meant. I think before we started recording, you had mentioned that you don't know much about numerology. And I was gonna say, I'm willing to bet you know more than what you think you do,
Right,
because
it's there's
if
something in
you
there.
do practice tarot even a little bit,
Yeah,
um, you are practicing a little bit of numerology, and sometimes quite a bit.
yeah.
There's a lot of numerological significance built into each of the tarot cards.
So for our listeners, we were gonna use me as an example
Yeah.
and do a little bit with my birthday and, see what interesting insights I can learn about myself.
Mhm.
Yeah,
All right, you ready to get into it then?
I'm ready, I'm ready.
Okay. Oops, I'm sorry. Let me just pull up your chart here.
Tell me why
All
I
right.
am the way I am.
Exactly. Well, and that's what I love about numerology, because it brings that to the forefront and really
Mhm.
like takes I guess it takes the blame off of yourself if there's ever things that you're like struggle with about yourself, right?
Yeah,
But it's like, no, this is how I meant to experience life, and this is what I meant to work through.
yeah,
So that's what's wonderful about it. Okay, so I'm gonna first just I pulled up your whole chart, so your core
mhm.
numbers, which I know we didn't really have much time to talk about all the numbers.
Okay,
But these are not only based on just your birthday, but looking at different energies of your name and how they all correlate together and what they
mhm,
do. So I'm gonna kind of
okay,
give you just a quick overall synopsis, and then I'm gonna dive into your life path number. And
okay,
then if we have time, talk a little bit maybe about your birthday number
okay.
as well. So just looking at all your core energies and how they interact together, I do see that you're probably very mind oriented. You're very logical.
All those books
Um,
behind me.
well, yeah, obviously, yeah,
Right.
exactly. I'm trying not to be too obvious, but that right away, looking at your numbers, I'm like, wow, yes, it's
Yep.
very focused energy, but you also have a soft, nurturing side that
Mhm,
maybe not everybody sees. I'm sure your family sees this, but definitely, you have some of that parental energy going on as well
mhm,
in your chart. But, there may be you feel at times that there's a pull, and I think you spoke to this, right, about your upbringing, about, being a very conservative upbringing, and then you branching out more recently into who you're meant to be, because there is kind of this pull between some of the energies you have within you where, um, your true life path and what you're learning to become is very independent and very unique and
mhm.
non-conservative at all. Like,
Yep,
you are meant to be original,
yep.
maybe even a little eccentric.
Mhm,
So you're meant to bring a lot of these energies forward, but when you grew up, you felt that you had to be more conservative, because it's your life path is surrounded by these energies that they're even numbers. So even numbers tend to be more conservative and more concerned with society and fitting in, and worried more about um, well, just that fitting in and helping other people in society versus your internal energies like want to focus on what you want to do and what your
Yeah.
own path is.
Yeah.
So that's probably why you feel this push pull at times too.
Yeah. Can I tell a story real quick
Yeah, of
that fits
course.
in that? Because I think I've shared this on the podcast before. I don't remember, but I remember my first day of seminary. So I left Bible college and went right into seminary. So when you go to seminary, you get your master's degree. Everybody's so much more proper there,
Mhm.
all the different things. And so I pull up in my car and I've got like I got like a Hollister t-shirt on, like my hat on backwards. I had long hair at the time, like down to my shoulders, had highlights in it. I had like Green Day blasting out of my speakers, just like rolling like I would roll in the college. And I walk in the the door and the woman at the desk is like, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm here for my first day of class." And she's like, "Oh," and she's like, "Go downstairs to the chapel." So I go in the chapel. Everybody in there's got like suits on and stuff, and one professor who I knew came down and sat next to me. Is like, "Don't let this place change you." He said,
Exactly.
"Just
I love
be
that.
who you are." And that was a struggle for me all through seminary because I always
Yeah.
felt that pull between being like everybody else so I could fit into these different groups because, if you fall in line with this group, you get in with that group. But I always felt that pull to
Mhm.
be myself. So that speaks to me. Thank you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, and that I think that also speaks that you were very much, even though maybe you had, a twisty road to get to where you are now,
Hmm.
but very much you were aligned with who you were authentically and
Yeah.
who you're meant to become
Hmm.
by allowing that to still come out, even when it was like, you were put in situations where maybe, you definitely could have diminished that quite a
Yeah.
bit if you didn't have such strong numbers about yourself.
Mm.
I know I personally experienced the opposite. I definitely, pushed myself away and put myself in a box.
Yep.
But thankfully, you didn't do that, right?
Yeah.
But you do have very, very strong independent numbers in the centralized part of your chart.
Mm.
Um, so let me kind of go more specifically into your life path number,
Hmm.
since that's what we first covered here. So there are different ways of calculating your life path number, but I like to just take all the numbers all together, add them up, and then reduce it down. There's other ways in which you'll kind of come up with a different compound number, that double
Hmm.
digit number before the reduction. But you'll always end up with the same root number anyway.
Hmm.
My point to say this is because I'm going to dive into what that compound number is for
Sure.
you, because I look beyond just that root number into the depths of, how is that number really going to play out and how are you meant to learn those lessons?
Hmm.
But the root number of your life path, you are a one. All
Hmm.
right. And that's why I said you're very individualistic. You're meant to do things your own way. You're meant to be the first one to start things, right? And to really step into your own authority
Mm.
and utilize those natural gifts that you have of creating something new in life to really walk your own path and do
Mhm.
what lights you up.
Mm.
And, and what can also come along with this is, although, there's all these really wonderful strengths and these balanced energies that the number carries, there's also what we call a shadow side to all numbers, because the light can't exist without the shadow, right?
Mhm.
And we are, again, like I said, we're learning to become these energies. And so the one has all those amazing qualities that I just mentioned, but it can also mean that you may have found at times that you were struggling with your independence. So it can go two different ways. Someone who's very codependent, but learning to be independent and learning to walk their own path and
Mhm.
follow their own authority, or, depending on other parts of the chart, it can turn into someone who's just trailblazes and doesn't care about anyone else and just walks their own path. And that's all that matters.
Mhm.
I think for you, maybe it's more the softer kind of
Mhm.
side, especially looking at your other numbers in your chart. Um, so you're meant to learn to become this authentic leader, right?
Mm.
And that's kind of what you're doing right
Mm.
now,
Yep.
right? And what you're teaching people and really sharing what you have to say, and you're creating in
Mm.
that way. And even though one isn't part of what we call the creation triad, so there's like three different triads of numbers in
Mhm.
numerology, and the creation triad is a 3, 6, and 9. One falls in what we call the mind triad. So it is very logical and
Mhm.
mind based. But one is, even though it may not be this, the creator, like we're talking about a three energy, think of like the Empress. Remember, we were
Mhm.
talking about the tarot.
Yep. Yep.
The three has that kind of energy. The one is that magician energy where you are meant to create and achieve in the material world. And very similar to what I mentioned about the eight, doing it with a higher purpose
Mhm.
and being in alignment in that way to, something a little bit more selfless.
Mhm. Mhm.
And then so if we go deeper, just
Mhm.
like I said, those root numbers beyond or behind the one. So your full birthday added up is a 28,
Mhm.
right? And then think of it. So 2 plus 8 is then 10, which then 1 plus 0 reduces to 1.
Mhm.
So, we can look at all different aspects. We can look at the energies of that 28 and that 10, because that's why I really like to dive deeper beyond just that root number, because there's so much more information about how you're meant to walk your path.
Mhm.
And the 28 right there is showing that you're bringing in that compassion, you're bringing in the intuitive sense, but also learning to exercise your own authority.
Mhm.
And probably what comes with having an eight in a life path too, a lot of times there are, you know, power struggles in life. And, you going to seminary school and having all these different authority figures
Mhm.
about your life, probably you experience some of those things.
Yep.
And then also with that too, you were trying to find internal balance of understanding yourself, understanding how you work with other people, um, but from a very compassionate lens.
Mhm.
And so then when we break that 28 down, we look at the 10. I see numbers that have a zero in them, like the 10, 20s, 30s, and so on. Very similar to master numbers. Because think about that. When we reduce the 10, it reduces to a one. So remember, I talked about the master number having that dual energy, the dual identical energy.
Mhm.
You have that again here with that 10. And what that zero is doing, that zero is, it's not adding challenges, but it's adding more of that connection to the divine,
Mhm.
more intuition, more of those subtle expressive qualities about yourself. So, yes, you are meant to learn to be independent and be that leader and achieve and also um, gain that material attainment to serve a higher purpose. You're doing it with your intuition. You're doing
Mhm.
it with your spirituality focused. Um, and so that's like this extra potential that's also backing you, very similar to how the master numbers are as well.
Mhm.
So how does all that, just like the life path explained, how does that all resonate with
Yeah,
you?
like, I'm thinking I'm just playing back over, especially the more recent, years because where to even start? Like, growing up in that setting, it was you were taught in a way, even if it wasn't, like, outwardly taught, you kinda came away with the idea that your inner voice was bad.
Mm,
Right? So you always have to go to an external authority to get your direction. So always come back
yeah.
to the church, right? Always go, the professors know more than you. Always go to the Bible, always go to God, and whatever. If something inside of you says something different, that thing is wrong. And so I
Mm,
learned all my life to squash down that voice, like to never
mm,
ever listen to it, lock it away because it doesn't have anything good to share. There we were taught that verse, and I think in the book of Jeremiah, it says the heart above all things is deceitful, right? So it's wicked, and
wow.
and there was like
Mm,
that verse was manipulated to make it mean that, like, your heart and your inner voice is bad, so don't listen to it. And so that's just the way I was for most of my life. And fast forward, many years later, my father passed away last March, and I was driving home from the hospital, and I remember I had this thought, like, I don't remember the last time I cried. Like, I don't remember the last time I accessed, like, real feelings. And,
yeah.
I stuffed away, like, all of my grief, like, all of my life. And I was like, no, like, I need to get in touch with this. I need to figure this out. So I took a lot of time. I stopped the podcast for a while. I did, like, a lot of inner work and just tried to access those different feelings that I had stuffed away. So along with that came, like, my introduction to the idea of the inner child and,
Mm,
coming in touch with that inner intuitive voice. And so one of the things I've been doing in 2024, I said my goal is really to get to reintroduce myself to that inner child, to that voice that I shut away for the longest time.
Mm.
And one of those ways has been through art, because growing up I was super into art. Like, I wanted to be an artist, I wanted to work for Disney, I wanted to do all these different things,
Mm.
but I had a
Love that.
significant figure in my life who told me that my art wasn't good enough. And so I put it
Mm.
away for like 30 years. I literally never drew anything again because it was too triggering for me. And so my wife and my daughter, my mom, for Christmas got me a whole lot of art supplies. And I've been doing, I mean, I have, just to show you on the camera, like I have like tons of things I've been doing with like that
Oh,
I've
that's
been,
awesome. You made
it,
that? That's cool.
yeah, I've been making like just tons of stuff behind me you can see, but like I've just been doing so much, but it's been awakening this joy in me. And I did
Yeah.
this like thing on my website called the Art Studio, where I just put all these different canvases up there. I tell people, if you want it, I'll mail it to you for free. Just pay the shipping. If you want to pay more, great. If you don't, it just to spread some joy, because I feel like this
Yeah.
is bringing me so much joy. It's
Mhm.
helping bring other people some joy as well. So the different things that you're sharing about the numbers, I'm seeing these different connections,
Mhm.
especially in these most recent part of my journey, because I've stuffed away all of that stuff in order to kind of honor these different authority figures in my life. And there was a real power struggle in there. And now I've always been searching for this internal balance. So I'm seeing all these different things
Mhm.
are coming to light. So yes, right on.
Yeah. Doesn't it just help you make sense of it all and be like, "Wow, I mean,
Yeah.
clearly my life was divinely planned
Yeah.
and with the help in
Yeah,
that
yeah,
way."
yeah.
And yeah, I love your art. So I'm so glad now that you're not worrying about what other people say, and I think it's wonderful. I think you're
Thank
very
you.
talented.
Thank you.
Um, and not only remember I mentioned the one is that creator kind of energy where you're meant to create and put things out in the world.
Mhm.
So the more you do that, the more fulfilled you really will feel. And when probably at times in your life when you haven't, people that have a lot of one energy that they're not, following their independence, they're not, putting that creative energy out in whatever way works for them, they can tend to have a lot of issues around the sacral chakra. So, like lower back hurts, issues in the reproductive area. So, all different things like that can go on because that's blocked creative energy that they
Yeah.
really, you as a one, you have such powerful creative energy, and people with ones as well, you're meant to put that out there. And and so it is unfortunate when you hear stories about that, and that's unfortunate thing about our society as well. A lot of times we do get told like, no, you're not meant to be that way. You're not good enough. But hopefully like you've turned it around now and now you've learned to be able to like take it and be like, I don't care. I'm doing this. This feels good.
That's right. Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's the funniest thing is like there's so many I'm seeing there's like a lot of different you have a podcast, so you know the podcast struggle, but there's like a lot of people out there who are it's about, getting making the podcast bigger, it's about getting more of the downloads, it's about getting more of the listeners, it's about raising more money on Patreon, like doing all these different things. And for a while I tried to fall in line with that, but
Yeah.
it got so overwhelming for me. And now I'm at this point where
I feel
like
ya.
I just said to my wife the other day, I'm like, I just want to create things that make me happy. Like, I said I'm having
Mhm.
conversations not because I think it's gonna get a lot of downloads, but because I really want to know more about this particular thing, and it makes me really excited. Like, I'm making this art stuff, not because I wanna make money with it, because it makes me so happy, and, like, it
Yeah.
just makes me it, like, lights me up to do these different things, and when something comes along that might be a really good opportunity for my career or to advance something, I'm now at this point where, like, if it doesn't trigger some kind of joy in me, I'm not afraid to say no like I used to be. Like I used to
I
want
love
to
that. That's perfect.
I used to want to say yes, I'll do it because it's going to do A, B, and C, even if it makes me feel like it's going to be a treacherous experience for me, like something I don't want to do. But nowadays I'm
Mhm.
like, if it's not really going to bring me joy, I don't know if I really
Yeah.
want to engage in it as hard as I used
Yeah.
to. So,
Well, and I think people can pick up on that and
mhm.
they can tell the people that are just they're doing it for the wrong reasons and the
Right.
people that are just trying to be authentic and like you said just literally doing it because you love doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm the same way. That's why I started my podcast because yes, I am a life path 3. I'm meant to learn to express myself.
Mhm.
That sounded like so much fun. Like it just really did. And same thing and it's like, you know what? If I only get 100 downloads on that one episode, I don't that's 100 people
That's
that
right.
I didn't talk to
It's a
before.
bonus. Right. That's a
Yeah,
bonus. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly, and it's like So, yeah, I totally feel where you're coming from, and that is being true authentic, and I do think that in the long run, that'll take you even further because you are following your authenticity and you're not forcing something. You're
Yeah.
not pretending.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, other people haven't figured that out yet.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, it's hard when we're just trying to follow the model that we see online when it's like, that doesn't work for everybody. Not everyone's
Yeah.
meant to do that stuff.
Yeah. I talked to this guy a couple weeks ago. His name is Rob Bell, but he used to be a pastor. He left the church, he does all this other stuff now, but he's doing similar stuff with his own art. And he's now doing, he like does art in his garage and stuff like that. And he said to me, he's like, he's like, I just do it because I don't know what I'm doing. It's like when I make something, it makes me so
Mhm.
happy. He's like, and if somebody wants it, that's just like icing on the cake. But I've already got the
Mhm.
cake because it's making me so happy. And if somebody else thinks it's cool, that's great. Just kind of come along for the ride. And that's what I feel like what it is. And that's not to say that's no like that's not to shame anybody who doesn't feel the same way because other people are wired
Exactly.
differently. So they might have other things
Exactly.
that they're trying to pursue. So I've tried to make it very clear to people that like this is my path. It doesn't have to be the way that you do it. This is the way
Mhm.
I do it. And it's for whatever
Yeah.
reason it's sparking some joy in me. So
Yeah. That's wonderful to hear you say that, just knowing and looking at your numbers because, like I said, you are meant to walk your own path and be true to yourself. And looking at your other numbers, and because your birthday reduces down to a 7, you have some other 7 energies in your chart too, which 7s are very intuitive. And I already talked about that. And then remember, I said like you have that 0, which adds to the intuition, and the
yeah.
2 behind your life path. So when you probably get in touch with that inner voice, it's probably very clear to you. And you're like,
Mm,
I know what I need to do because you have very strong intuition. But unfortunately, a lot of people that have 7s, it takes them a long time to trust that intuition. And
yes.
then we always feel that, like, oh, no, I got to get this other certification. I got to get this other degree, and searching externally versus be like, maybe I already know this when I
Yeah.
really tap into my inner knowing. So you
Yeah.
have a lot of that. I can see that in your chart.
Wow. My mind is blown. So is there anything else in there that you can share with me that you see?
Okay. Well, it is interesting. There's something called the maturity number.
Hmm.
And this number typically comes on board, around 40-ish, sometimes a few years before, sometimes a few years after, just
Yeah.
depends on
I'm
wherever
42,
someone's
so
at
here we
in
are.
evolution. Right. So you have this maturity number of a 7.
Mhm.
So remember what I said, 7 is about walking your own spiritual path and being true to yourself. So that's kind of also where I pulled that information, not only your other numbers, but also looking at that being like, okay, it wasn't until recently that you probably really focused on your own path. And 7 can tend to be at times a little bit of a darker energy
Mhm.
because, and I'm gonna say this, we go there. In my expression, I have a 77 expression. I know the 7 well as well. It can be dark. And you mentioned, unfortunately, I'm very sorry to hear about your father's passing.
Mhm.
And sometimes it can be those dark times that kick off that self-inquiry and helping you align to that. And so probably in the past few years, that's why you've really felt aligned to being true to yourself. Because again, that's also your birthday number. So that's what you came into this world with, those talents, with those abilities that you naturally have. You're bringing more of those out now and
Mm,
feel probably more free to do that. And not so, having to worry about society. And like I said, 7 is also kind of an eccentric kind of number, and thinking differently, and you are meant to be very unique in your expression of that
mm.
too.
Wow. Yeah, that I mean, that again, I mean, it goes I mean, I think about the podcast and how I was saying this again to my wife just a couple weeks ago. I said, "There's so much pressure because I'm having people I've had a lot of people approach me to do, like, ads on the podcast,
Mhm.
to run ads and, to do different things to get the podcast out there," and I said to her, I'm like, "I just don't want to do it." I said, "Because I there's something I like about just turning on the microphone and saying hello to people and then starting the conversation, with somebody. I said, I just like to do it this way. And I said, I just don't want to do what everybody else is doing. And I want everybody to leave me alone and understand
Mhm.
that. And and again, like it's only been in the last couple of years, even before my father passed away, that I've really not become selfish, but just become like so absorbed
Yeah.
in like my individual path and the way that I want to do it. And I'm not. afraid anymore of what anybody has to say about it. Like I've had a lot of
Mhm.
conversations on the podcast that have really upset some people from my former tribe, even the more progressive people, because I got a medium on the show. And
Mm.
I was so interested in this because like all
Oh
my
my
life I've heard that
that's so
these people are
fun.
evil, right? So I'm like, now I really want to. I've always been told not to open that door. Like now I want to open the door,
Now you've
So
opened the Pandora's box, and
yeah, exactly.
that's what you are meant to with all that 7, you are meant to go there.
Right, and I've resisted all my life to open these doors, and now I'm like, "Oh, I wanna peek behind these doors." And
Oh,
I've had people come in my DMs like, "You're getting into some really dangerous territory," and I'm like, "This is my path." Like, I'm asking people these questions because I am interested in what they have to say. I might
mhm,
not come to a place where I agree with them on everything, but can I not still learn from them?
exactly.
Can what they teach me and their experience, make inform my own experience in some way. And so
Yeah.
I'm coming to this place now where I'm becoming much more comfortable with that. And like I don't care that the medium downloads go way down or the tarot downloads go way down because people are interested in that. It's not for that, it's for me. And whereas I
Mhm.
wasn't so comfortable with that 5 years ago, today I'm much more comfortable with it. So all
Yeah.
of that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, that's oh my gosh, I know I keep saying that, but that's so beautiful because I feel a lot of that and very resonant in my story as well, and just growing up not being able to look into these things. And when you do, it's like, oh my God, there's so much of the world that I was shutting out and so much wonder.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're allowing that to just you're doing what you love. And maybe the audience that you have, for those certain ones, they don't want to listen, but you'll find other people, other
That's
aligned
right.
people
That's right.
will like it.
Yeah, I've had a
And
lot of people say, "Wow, I never thought tarot could be so interesting." One person said I always avoided the tarot aisle at the bookstore because I was afraid demons were going to jump out at me. But she
oh
goes,
my gosh.
It's like I walked down the aisle the other day and I looked at the cards and they're so interesting, So
Oh
it's
my
just
gosh, they
interesting
really
to hear.
are.
Yeah, so it's interesting to hear people say how like these conversations have helped them um, kind of take away the fear around these different topics that
Yeah,
they've been taught to fear.
exactly.
Yeah,
And there's so much spirituality behind these topics
that's right.
that we're told to fear, but it's like there's so much more truth right there
Yeah,
that we were told to turn away from, unfortunately.
yeah, that's
Um,
right.
yeah.
So good. Okay. So last question for you, because we're running a little bit
Mhm.
low on time. But for people who maybe want to dive into this a little bit more, other than listening to our conversation,
Yeah.
we can talk about your podcast in a minute too. Was there any like kind of book for the nerds out there like you and me who like to dig
Okay.
into
Yeah.
something? Like, is there any kind of book you'd recommend that's a good starter book that's not going to overwhelm us?
The one that I started with, I'm sorry, I should have had it in front of me. There's so many wonderful ones that you can
Mhm.
literally go to Amazon, but
Okay.
I think it was oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I can't remember what it's even called right
No
now.
worries. You can
It's
send it
like
to me later and I'll drop it in the show
yeah,
notes.
let's
Yeah.
do that. I'll send it
Yeah.
to you. It's like the beginner's numerology or something, and it really breaks down all the numbers and understanding how to calculate them, understanding, what they mean. And I literally when I first started, I was with my friends and family and I was like giving them readings out of this book. And
Yeah.
and they were like, "Oh, wow, this is so accurate." And then, of course, now, like, I'm so much more in depth at it, and I'm like, "That was beginning, but it was wonderful to start with."
Sure.
But you can do so much with just learning, just understanding the energies of each number.
Mhm.
You can know so much about somebody and really help them align to their path.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. I'll send you the name of that book. But I also, on my podcast, Between Two Realms, when I first started my podcast last year, it was done solo. And
Mhm.
I focused a lot around teaching what numerology is and how to use it to self actualize.
Mhm.
So, I mean, if you do want to go back and listen to those older episodes, I talk a lot about it there, how to calculate all the numbers. Um, and my website, which my business name and website is called Illuminated Life Healing. If you go there, I have all kinds of information on numerology. I also have a blog page which will walk you through calculating your life path number. Um, and then if you're really interested too, I have a newsletter that you can subscribe to, which I just moved it over to Substack.
Mhm.
So on Substack, I'm Numerology Knowledge with Lauren, or you can go to my website and sign up for my newsletter and get it that way. But I share monthly the universal energies of the month,
Mhm.
talking about like what we may have in store. And then just my other musings on numerology and my thoughts. and like, why it's so beneficial and what the heck even is it? And like going more in depth into those things.
Love it. Well, I will put all those links in the show notes, and we can definitely do this again sometime if you open, because I have a lot more we
Yeah.
can explore. Yeah,
Yeah. This was fun.
awesome. Thank you.